try!
That time of year again, the John Eales Medal upon us here at the Australian Rugby Union. I'm joined by former Wallaby Adam Freier. Haas, it's an important time of year.
Yeah, it is. It's not just celebrating the Wallabies' success, but also the community, volunteers, Super Rugby, our girls who just had an outstanding year, winning gold. But look, I think for one, and it's fresh in our minds, the NRC Player of the Year. You've been covering it for this year as a journalist, and so many great players, and Michael Checkers also recognised that with some of his selection, but Player of the Year from your end.
Mate, two that really caught my eye throughout the season were the scrum halves for the Sydney teams, Jake Gordon at the Country Eagles and also Matty Lucas at the Sydney Rays. I thought those two were sensational in leading their teams around the park.
Yeah, well, it is interesting you say that, Marty, because the Perth Spirit and the Team of the Year for Rugby.com.au only had Heath Tessman on the bench as the only Spirit player. But I like John Eales. I think he's been great for them all year. And also Simone for the Rays. He's a future Wallaby. And I know if you look through this competition now, you look at some of the players starting to rise through the NRC. So I think Simone's the one for mine. I think he'll be very tough to beat. But John Eales just trailing him.
Looking now at the Super Rugby Awards as well, Adam, we've got, of course, the Rookie of the Year and the Super Rugby Player of the Season.
Yeah, look, Rookie of the Year is always an interesting one to look at. Last year was Sean McMahon, and this year still, I think there's a lot of players developing in this competition, and you don't have to go too far away from home. Harry Scoble from the Western Force, the hooker there, he came onto the scene late. He was outstanding. Reece Hodge, who also has played many tests for the Wallabies this year. I just think it's a good position for the competition to be in. But look, for the Super Rugby Player of the Year, this is going to be a real interesting one because the players that excelled, like your Freier, Hooper, Foley, who are always in the same team, only really one of those people can stand up. But looking through at some of the nominations, I think Hooper will poll pretty well. Christian Lealiifano is another Brumbies player that had an outstanding season. And you're looking at the Reds, you've got Samu Karevi. He's been brilliant in a Reds jersey and a Wallabies jersey. And then with the Rebels, Sean McMahon again. He won plenty of awards last year. So, look, for mine, I'm probably going to go someone like Samu Karevi. I think he's a player that performed consistently well in a side that didn't travel well. So I think he'll poll plenty of votes. So for mine, Queensland Reds might get an award that night, and it might be in the form of Samu.
And of course, Dane Halipeti as well over the Western Force had a sensational season for the Western Australian side and culminated in some Wallabies games.
Yeah, and Adam Coleman as well. So it's a tough one this year for Super Rugby Player of the Year, but I'm going to go Samu Karevi. I just think he performed well in a side that didn't go too well. I think he'll poll plenty of votes. So I'll go Samu, then maybe Michael Hooper or Sean McMahon. But yeah, look, there's plenty to choose from, but I'd go Samu.
Looking now as well, straight into the national sides, the Sevens, of course, did sensational in Rio. The women especially were amazing.
Yeah, and look, if there was a Team of the Year award, they'd certainly get it, Olympic gold medalists. But who do you pick in this side? You've got Emily Cherry, Shannon Parry, Charlotte Caslick, Elia Green. Like, there's just so many to choose from. But look, for mine, I like Shannon Parry. I think she's such a hard worker, and I love watching her play this year. She's also a contributor for Rugby.com.au. So, look, she'd poll very well the captain or co-captain, and I think hopefully she gets the award for our channel, but it'll be a very close race on that one.
Looking at the men now, Haas, and they didn't do quite as well in Rio as the women, but still a very successful season in 2016.
Yeah, it was. Look, Ed Jenkins, who's just stepped down as captain of the Sevens side, I think he'll go very well. Lewis Holland, another player that I thought was outstanding. Henry Hutchinson, who was a rookie, could almost be their best for the season. They went through a lot of combinations under Andy Friend, but look, for mine on this one, I'd like to see Hutch win it. He's a little pocket rocket. I know that many people wouldn't sort of expect him to win the award as a rookie, but he was brilliant, so was Cam Clark. But I'm going to go for a bit of a bolter here and say Henry Hutchinson.
Looking now at the big awards for the evening and the Wallabies Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, look, this is, well, there's been, 9 or 10 debutants this season, but you probably have to look at who's played the most time. Dane Halipeti's played a lot of minutes this year, and he started in most of them, but the form of Reece Hodge, Adam Coleman of late could poll pretty well. But a lot of new blood, not just in Super Rugby and NRC, but also for the Wallabies. But look, for mine, this is a real tough one. I think on paper you'd probably say Reece Hodge has probably been the standout or the biggest rising star of the Wallabies, but maybe Dane Halipeti with the minutes, and Adam Coleman had 2 very good games recently, so he could poll well. So, maybe Reece Hodge for mine, but that's a real tough one to judge.
And of course, the big one for the evening is the John Eales Medal for the Wallabies Players Player.
Yeah, and the 5 contenders really are, and let's start with probably the biggest name in Australian rugby, Israel Folau. Player that probably hasn't had hasn't had the best season of his own standards, but you've got to look at this competition, this John Eales Medal competition, from Chicago, Rugby World Cup, England series into the Rugby Championship. And Israel Folau's always been there in the polling and the votes. Always carries the ball well, always great in contact, and he'd be one of them. The next one would be Bernard Foley. He's always scoring points and kicking goals, and you saw last week in that final Bledisloe, which is still counting towards this tally, he was absolutely brilliant. And even during the Rugby World Cup, definitely man a match against England, and look, he's going to be a player that polls well again. Then you've got to look for someone like Will Genia, and I know Will hasn't played a lot of football in a lot of matches. Every time he's played, especially this year, and even the World Cup, he's been absolutely brilliant. So Will Genia, he'd have to be getting some points. Then you've got your two back rowers. Michael Hooper, well, he's always playing well, and he always seems to be holding a Seiko watch at the end of the match, getting man of the match. And David Pocock, I know he's had, the only thing that's sort of going to be in between him and someone like a Hooper or a Folau or a Foley is probably going to be in the amount of matches he's played. But the two back rowers are always going to be duelling and tussling it out. So they're my 5 picks. I won't pick one, but I do think it's going to be a very close race this year.
Well, there you have it. There's the Rugby.com.au preview ahead of the John Eales Medal celebrations, which happen tomorrow night. You'll find they will be live on Rugby.com.au, House.
Yeah, live stream for the first time. The event's being broadcasted by Rugby.com.au, and we've got the gold carpet, not the red carpet. We go gold, Wallaby gold, all that sort of stuff. Gold carpet, we've got Bill Pulver, we've got all the award winners, also speaking to Rupert on the night, because it is a co-op, the John Eales Medal. So plenty happening, and it'll all be here on Rugby.com.au from 6:45.